Me and a group of 3 friends formed a band. We have been playing together since the 9th grade and plan to be musicians. After we graduated high school, we decided to do it full-time. We saved enough money to buy a van and drove across the South from Texas to Florida, playing in small venues. I really thought we were going to make it to the big leagues one day. We were mostly in the rock and roll genre, more specifically, punk rock. I was really lucky to find this group of talented friends. I was the lead vocal, and I also play guitar. But Jason was the best at playing the guitar, and Philip was the drummer. My parents weren't always supportive. They were deeply religious and thought my punk rock was evil. And it didn't help that I dye my head black and spike it and dress gothic. They wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer like my older siblings, but I thought I was destined to be a rebel. In high school, me and my friends were outcasts, but we were respected. We were special because not many high schoolers can play in a band that attracts not only girls, but grown-ups as well. After we graduated high school, we bought a van with the money we saved up from playing around town. We traveled from Texas to Florida for about 4 years, growing our fan base during those years. The largest crowd we pulled at that time was about 4,000 people, which we thought was a big deal. Then one day, tragedy struck, a day that I will never forget for the rest of my life. Me and 2 girls and bandmates were coming back from a friend's house after an after party the night before. I was more drunk than both of the girls, and my friends as well. So much so that I have to be helped into the back of the van by the 2 girls. I drank more than everybody that night, so I wasn't in the position to drive. I passed out in the back of the van and woke up a few days later at the hospital. According to the toxicology report, both Jason and Philip had an alcohol blood level of 0.2%, more than twice above the legal limit. As you can guess by now, we got into an accident. I was asleep at the back of the van, so I didn't know what happened. The 2 girls that were with me didn't make it as well. I just woke up at the hospital, surrounded by my family, which include my parents, my older brother, and sister. The accident happened in Atlanta, Georgia, and my brother lives in Houston, while my parents and older sister lives in Waco, Texas. Come to find out, I was in coma for 6 days. It didn't take long for me to start asking about my friends, and by the looks of everybody's faces, I was sure that they were gone. Words could not explain how I felt. Somehow, I felt like it was my fault. I was the leader of the group. I was the one that pushed the boundaries, and my friends were right behind me. I was the one that gets high the most, drank more, and pushed the limit further and further. I lost motivation to move on. For the next 3 weeks that I was in the hospital, I was forced to eat. I thought about hiding the pills they were giving me and planned on taking it all at once, but I was afraid how my mom would feel when I'm gone. I didn't care about myself at that point, but how my family felt. My mom especially. While she was next to me at the hospital, she was crying every day for me to turn my life around and to be like my older brother almost every day throughout my stay in the hospital. My injuries from the accident include brain concussion, broken ribs, and multiple flesh wounds. Nothing life-threatening. The doctor said that I was lucky because they didn't think anybody could survive that accident. Till this day, I haven't looked at the pictures of the vehicles. It was all over the news, so I didn't watch the news or read the papers. My mom said that it was divine providence, and I have another chance in life to hit the reset button. She said that the prayers that she has been praying for me worked, and the tragedy only made her faith in God much stronger. And who could blame her? I believed her. I grew up in the church but never a believer. But by the time I was discharged from the hospital, I believed in God more than ever. I had 7 months of physical therapy before my parents convinced me to go back to school. UT was my first choice, but I wanted to stay close to my brother in Houston, so I chose to enroll in the University of Houston. I was close to my brother, and he was my role model. He's very kind, one of the nicest person I know, and wouldn't hesitate to help anybody in a heartbeat. Totally opposite of me. He didn't want to be famous. he doesn't like being the center of attention, and he's okay letting other people shine. My brother is 5 years older than me, so he was 28 years old at the time. He lives with his fiancée. He recently graduated from medical school, and his fiancée was a pharmacist. At that time, I really envied him. I thought they were a perfect couple. They have been dating for 2 years now and planning on getting married in a few months. They lived in a very affluent area in Houston called Hyde Park, in a neighborhood populated by young professionals, where a 4-bedroom house cost almost $500,000. My brother is a very simple guy, doesn't really have expensive taste, so I knew it was all his fiancée's doing. I have met her a couple of times. She's a couple of years older than me. Back then, I thought she was really cool, beautiful, smart, outgoing. I thought they really complemented each other. I was young, just 22. However, I don't mean to brag, but at that age I have been with a lot of women. Credit to my time in the band. And I have a good read on people, but didn't see any red flags about her. After I moved in with them, I started the summer semester at the University of Houston. I was only taking 6 credit hours, so I wasn't super busy. I didn't know what I wanted to do at the time because I was confused. I was just taking classes to make my parents happy. My passion is still music, but I was still recovering from the tragedy that happened more than a year ago. However, I was still in the live music scene, going to concerts, and networking with local musicians. Although this time I was completely sober and drug-free. Since I moved out of my parents' house, I was starting to feel better, mostly because I don't feel my parents breathing over my neck, and I enjoy living with my brother and his fiancée. I wasn't home a lot, and sometimes I don't see them for 3 or 4 days, because I was always coming home late. I would later find out that my brother's fiancée's sister lives a few blocks away from us. That explains why she wanted my brother to buy a house in that area, next to them. Few weeks into living with my brother and his fiancée, I noticed how much they loved each other. I noticed my brother loved her way more than she loves him, and I thought that was natural. Strangely enough, my brother's fiancée's brother-in-law was a doctor as well, and the sister was in the medical field. It didn't take long for me to find out that my brother's fiancée and her sister had a sibling rivalry going. Everything her sister has, she wanted to have something better, and vice versa. At first, I thought that was cute, because they were both hot and look alike, although they were 2 years apart. I didn't interact with her sister and brother-in-law very much because I wasn't always home when they visit. One Saturday, I was supposed to go to a concert with a girl that I was seeing at the time. Ramones were playing that night. They came to Houston, so I didn't want to miss that. Unfortunately, the 2 tickets I bought were fake, so they wouldn't let us in. I invited her to my brother's house. When we got to my brother's house, we saw that they were having a party. My brother and his fiancée were having a pool party with guests, which include her sister and brother-in-law and 2 other guys and girls that I haven't seen before. I will later find out that the 2 guys were doctors as well. The girl is a friend of my brother's fiancée. Apparently, they host parties at each other's house often. They had the barbecue pit fired up. Everybody was in their bathing suit, either in the pool or in the hot tub. Being the extrovert that I am, I changed my clothes to join them in the party. The girl that I came with was a little shy, so she sat by the pool, eating, because she was uncomfortable stripping down. She wanted to go upstairs to the balcony to get a good view, but I wanted to hang out with my brother and his friends. My brother's fiancée and her brother-in-law and sister were in the hot tub, so we didn't pay them any attention. Few minutes later, I looked at where the girl that I came with was sitting, and I realized that she has gone upstairs and looking over us from the balcony. She later got bored because she realized that I was going to hang out with my brother and his friends throughout the night. She got bored and bounced. I met her for lunch the following day and apologized to her for the night before. During our lunch, she almost made me choke over my food when she out of nowhere told me that my brother's fiancée is having an affair with her brother-in-law. I asked her how she came by that, and she told me that when she was going upstairs to the balcony, she saw my brother's fiancée was backed up against the wall by her brother-in-law and was fondling her. She was resisting his advances, but playfully. They immediately broke apart in a hurry as soon as they saw her. I tried to dismiss her story by telling her that she may have confused my brother's fiancé with her sister because they look alike. She hardly knows them anyway, so she may have confused them. Indeed, at the time, I was totally dismissive of her story, and I told her that she was confused and changed the topic. At the back of my mind, I wondered whether her story was true. For the next 2 weeks, that was all I could think about. We later broke up and I started dating another girl, but she has planted a seed of suspicion in my mind. I started noticing things, like how my brother's fiancé wanted to be like her older sister. Sometimes they show up at the same event wearing the same outfit. In my mind, it stopped becoming cute, and I felt like it was some weird horror movie. Then I was afraid that if there's something weird going on, my brother is screwed. Looking at my brother, as smart as he is, he's not the type that would figure something like this out by himself, looking by how much he loves and trusts his fiancée. I'm not going to be the one that breaks the news to him unless I'm 100% sure that she was having an affair. One Friday, about a month after my ex-girlfriend told me about her suspicion, my brother told me that they were having another party at one of his friend's house, and they wanted me to come. I drove together with my brother and his fiancée. It wasn't a pool party this time. It was more of a game night, and they hired a Japanese chef to cook for them. He was making some foreign delicacy for us. Since it was the first time I have seen my brother's fiancée with her brother-in-law since the last time, I monitored the dynamic of their interaction, looking for cues of an ongoing affair. My brother's fiancée's sister was there as well. I noticed that my brother's fiancée and her brother-in-law were taking every opportunity to steal glances at each other. The glances were a bit unusual because there was a lot of smiling and winking. I was the only one that noticed it at the time, although I thought I was a bit biased and I was seeing something that wasn't there because of my suspicions. I watched them closely and I didn't see them run off or do anything too obvious. I was watching them like a hawk that night and I didn't see any obvious evidence other than them sharing little moments, winking from a distance that could be perceived as being innocent from an unbiased audience. I didn't have much fun that night because I was spending every moment watching my brother's fiancée and her brother-in-law. On our ride home with my brother and his fiancée, I was thinking whether I should tell my brother and when, because he was going to get married in 4 months to this woman, and it's possible that she's having an affair behind his back. However, I have no proof. I went on several infidelity forums to ask for advice on what I should do, and somebody suggested that I hire a private investigator. I didn't have any money. I wasn't working by then, but my brother gifts me money sometimes, and my mom sends me money as well. I decided to save the little that I can to hire a private investigator to follow my sister-in-law. After 2 weeks, the private investigators captured my brother's fiancée visiting her sister's house 3 times when she knew that her sister is clearly not home and her brother-in-law was home. The private investigator described an instant where she pulled into the driveway 5 minutes after her sister left for work. It was clear that she was having an affair with her sister's husband. After 2 weeks of collecting evidence, I felt like the evidence was not convincing enough. I felt like all I have was evidence of suspicion, not actual proof. My brother is going to get married to her soon, and I have to do something to let my brother know. For days, I debated whether to break the news to him, and sometimes it kept me all night, because I knew how much he loves her, and how much it would be difficult for him to accept it. Moreover, there's still a voice in my mind that kept saying, what if I was wrong? I decided one evening that I was going to tell my brother about it. So I got home early when I knew he was back from work. When I got home, he wasn't home. His fiancée was home watching TV in the living room. She was surprised that I was home early. We started talking and she mentioned that we were going to have another party this weekend. I cut the conversation short and started scrambling to find out what to do. I called the private investigator for some advice, and he told me to install hidden cameras around the house when it happened. I understood the risk of installing cameras because I may be found out, but I made a fateful decision to protect my brother at all costs. If they find the hidden camera and it turns out that she wasn't having an affair, so be it. I may get kicked out, but I wasn't too worried because at this point I was getting bored with the classes I was taking, and I was building contact with some friends in New York that wanted me to join their band. From the private investigator recommendation, I bought 6 mini 1080p USB charger camera and installed it in every strategic corner in the house. I tried to act as normal as possible because I didn't want to arouse suspicion as the last time. After the pool party was over, when everyone left the house, I hurried to collect the USB charger camera before my brother or his fiancé noticed that there is a USB charger on almost all the outlets, including in the bathroom. I removed the SD card and watched the footage all night thinking that I wouldn't see anything. Fortunately, I captured the footage of him fondling her when he came out of the bathroom and she was on the hallway. She immediately knocked his hand off playfully, just like my ex-girlfriend described. To me, that was as good as it gets to an affair. By then, it was almost 3 months before the wedding, and they have already invited most of the guests, including my parents. I was going to be the best man. That evening, I was up all night. After sorting through the SD cards for more evidence, I didn't see any other evidence other than the fondling part. So I was debating at this point how to break the news to my brother. So I went online and read through some articles and forums so I could come up with a good game plan. I concluded that after exposing them to my brother, we would pretend to travel out of town so we could catch them committing an affair red-handed. During the evening of the following day, when I got home that evening, so I convinced my brother to go on a ride with me. He was tired and didn't want to go, so I convinced him that there is something very important that I need to tell him. We took a ride and parked at a parking lot. There, I broke the news to my brother. I told him about my ex-girlfriend's suspicion and showed him pictures of my fiancé visiting his brother's house when her sister was not around, and footage of the brother-in-law fondling her on the hallway of his house. I have never seen my brother that upset in a long time. I told my brother about planning a trip so we can catch them red-handed. He totally dismissed me and drove me home immediately to confront his fiancée. When we got home, his fiancée was in the kitchen. She was about to ask us where we went, but my brother immediately started calling her all kinds of explicit names that I can't mention. I have never seen my brother that angry before, and he almost put his hands on her. He accused her of cheating. She didn't deny it. She started crying and asking for forgiveness. My brother was shouting at the top of his lungs, demanding answers. He asked her how long it has been going on, and she told him that they started having an affair 3 years ago, but she haven't had sex with him for over a year now, which I believe was a lie. If they started the affair 3 years ago, then the affair started before my brother even met her, because my brother met her 2 years ago and they started dating. Long story short, my brother canceled the wedding. He also paid a visit to my brother-in-law the following morning and exposed him in front of his wife. As far as I know, the sister is also working on divorcing him as well, and she refused to speak to my brother's fiancé. She left my brother's house that night, so it was just me and my brother in a big house. Although I planned on moving to New York, we didn't tell my mom what really happened, but I believe my brother told my dad. It was a real shock to my brother. After I dropped out of college, my brother took some time off from work for us to visit New York so I could restart my career. The dream of becoming a rock star is still alive.